Hi, I'm Joshua Wiener. I'm involved with the Lake Linganore Town Center artwork, and I'm a site specific artist. And what that means is I create art that is designed for its location. I want to share a few pieces to help articulate what I do and how I do it and why I do it. Every piece that I make relates to its greater context. And so the materials I pick, the shapes that I use, the apertures, the sight lines that are highlighted, all relate into the composition. This piece is a series of rings, and I wanted it to feel like, like almost like a giant was rolling these massive rings over the hill. So they climb up this hill and they descend the hill and they turn and they it relates to what defined this area, which was a massive effort by the biking community to create all these paths into nature. It's in Richmond, Virginia, and because they've got this massive river that swells and floods, the city's been pushed back about a half mile from the banks of this river, and so there's this fantastic expanse of nature that can be explored. And so the wheel is the way to explore it. The wheel leaves this light impression. The project that I was involved with also created a an additional bridge to the south shore that increased ADA access. So I like to weave aspects of the history of the project into making the project, but I always want to make sure that the artwork can stand alone. You don't have to hear the narrative to understand what it's about. That the elements are balanced in their composition and the materials relate to the greater context in a way that is enjoyable whether you know the full story. The the project in Durango is another bike centered community, and it commemorated the start of the Pro Cycle Challenge. And this project really relates with the Lake Linganore project in its positioning. It's in a roundabout. I love roundabouts. There's a controlled perspective change. When you know how people will move through a site, you're able to to play with that. And so in this case, I staggered all these bikers, and they're as you move around it, it appears like they're changing positions, like one's overtaking the next, and so it puts the audience in an active role. I think that's really important, and it helps encourage a sense of ownership. That when you are the driving force for the artwork, that you it becomes part of you. This project is in Greeley, and it's a series of stone pillars. All the materials that I pick, how they relate to the ground. You can see in this case that the foundations disappear. I feel like that's really important. That it becomes part of its site. That it's it can't be separated from its greater context. And so what I did in this space was it was a kind of a complex interchange, and I wanted the feeling of flow, that this sense of movement. So the lines cross through the stones and they layer in and out and create a rhythm. The butterflies move in a way that is one long path, and so it plays with the idea of the erratic path of the butterfly has been distilled to this really graceful singular movement. The the scale is always important. That the proportions of how you move into a space, the sight lines that are created, the materials that are used, whether every site has a different experience to it, and so I hope to generate something that is evocative of forces that might not be able to be seen, that there's some kind of undercurrent that is driving material to behave in a specific way. And sometimes I want it to be very obvious and literal, and other times I want to diffuse it, and I want to make it where it's a little bit more playfully woven into the the artwork, where you really would have to dig a little bit deeper. The project for Lake Linganore is a campfire. I felt like this was important because the the experience there is one of connecting with nature. And I always feel like when you're in nature, there's this sense of arrival at a campfire. And I felt like it was evocative of that beautiful intersection at Lake Linganore, where you're in nature and you're surrounded by nature, but it's also your home. It's a place that you're residing, and and because of that intersection, I wanted to give this sense of destination and a sense of peace and a sense of activity. I felt like the campfire has this rich movement to it. And so, once again, the movement of everybody passing by will animate the piece, and the changes of the day will give it this sense of continual movement. And and I wanted it to be something that could be appreciated anew every day. That the shapes will draw you in to explore and hopefully write new stories every day, that you could see different things. The the material is 1 inch plate steel, and we've explored it, Jason and I, and with a structural engineer to come up with ways to move it, because it's really big, getting it down the road, and how to build it. And so it's a buildable composition. At this point, it's still a sketch. We're developing it, and it's something that I think would sit beautifully in the space, and help express the character of Lake Linganore. That it's this place, this wonderful place to to experience nature and a dynamic community. I appreciate this opportunity to explore this space. Thank you.